Breath of the Wild 2 is like tomorrow. It's always coming, but it never arrives. Hopefully we'll get more news about it sometime soon, but in the meantime, I've been thinking a lot about what they'll do with the game. Will Link keep the Master Sword? Will Zelda be playable? And perhaps most importantly, what will they do to keep the world of Hyrule fresh? After all, Breath of the Wild's world was perhaps the biggest feature of the game, and by now many players are familiar with what it has to offer. One common idea I've heard for that is this: introduce an alternate world. After some thought, I think there's a very solid, consistent way they can do that. Ready to hear it? Alright, but let me warn you, it's probably going to sound pretty weird at first. The Zelda series has brought up on multiple occasions the existence of alternate worlds. The Sacred Realm, the Twilight Realm, and the Dark Realm all come to mind. The world that most games take place in is simply known as the Light World. But have you ever heard of the Spirit Realm? If you haven't, that's totally fine, it's only ever mentioned once in the series, in Breath of the Wild. During one of Link's memories, while Zelda is struggling to awaken her sealing power, she recalls one of the abilities her grandmother had. The ability to hear voices from, you guessed it, the Spirit Realm. Needless to say, the implications of this statement are huge. Before we get into that though, let's go over some information about spirits in the Zelda series, and then the realm itself. First, let's take a look at perhaps the 4 most important spirits in the series. The Champions. The spirits of Mipha, Daruk, Revali, and Urbosa were trapped aboard the Divine Beasts, held prisoner by the Blight Ganons. When Link enters a Divine Beast, its respective champion speaks to Link, no physical form, only a voice. Rather similar to how Zelda described her grandmother's ability, if you ask me. After defeating the Blight Ganon, that champion is set free, now able to show their face in front of Link. So clearly the champions existed somewhere before being freed. Somewhere they could speak to Link, who may have abilities not unlike Zelda's grandmother had, as he is the hero chosen by the Master Sword. King Rome's spirit, while not imprisoned in a Divine Beast, also lingered on after Calamity Ganon overtook Hyrule. When he revealed himself to Link as a spirit, he gave his message and dissolved into nothing. Yet we see him again at the end of the game, overlooking Zelda and Link alongside the champions. This again implies that he went somewhere during this gap. Were all of these spirits in the Spirit Realm? There are actually a few more spirits in Breath of the Wild, such as the Lord of the Mountain. This creature shows up randomly when an unearthly green glow shines from Satori Mountain. Although we've only seen examples from Breath of the Wild, this bluish green is used very often in the context of spirits, and the Lord of the Mountain is, according to legend, the reincarnation of a sage that died on Satori Mountain. It seems possible that on most nights this creature dwells in the Spirit Realm, and then it crosses over to the Light World when the mountain is glowing. Regardless of what other world the Lord of the Mountain is in, it's yet another case of a spirit apparently going between 2 worlds. Now, let's switch gears to another game with a heavy focus on spirits. Twilight Princess. When Link first goes to the Forest Temple, he runs into a mysterious spirit, commonly known as the Hero's Shade or Hero Spirit. This spirit initially takes the form of a golden wolf, but is also capable of taking another form, much like King Rome could. Full of regret from not passing on his skills, he brings Link to another world to teach him new sword techniques. The Hero's Shade makes several comments regarding Link's spirit, comparing it to that of the Sublime Beast, mentioning the Howling Stones calling out to Link's spirit, and when learning the final hidden skill, he tells Link that he now houses the spirit of the true hero. These statements, to me at least, imply that these training sessions were intended as a form of spiritual growth for Link. The world these training sessions take place in is also interesting, for it seems to closely resemble Hyrule, since we can see some familiar locations in the background. Besides this, however, this world remains very mysterious, so it's hard to say if it truly is the Spirit Realm or not. Of course, if it was impossible, I never would have brought it up, now would I? Looking back to the earliest game in the timeline, Skyward Sword shows us another world as well, but this one has a much heavier focus on spirits. This world has no name given in the game, but within wait 4 silent realms, trials prepared for Link. Fi directly states that the Silent Realms are domains of the spirit, and that Link's spirit must separate from his body to enter each Silent Realm. The purpose of these trials is to grow Link's spirit, which allows him to obtain blessings he needs to progress on his journey. The heavy emphasis on spirits here makes me wonder if perhaps the trials take place in the Spirit Realm. After all, this world matches the place the Hero's Shade dwells in quite closely. Also note that only Link's spirit can enter this world, and Fi can still speak to him across both worlds, similar to Breath of the Wild. In light of all this, I think there's a case to be made that these worlds could be one and the same. The biggest piece of evidence I could find against both realms being the same is that Link's body seems to be physically brought with the Hero's Shade, whereas when he enters the Silent Realm, only his spirit can enter. However, Link is still pretty physically restricted in the Silent Realm even as a spirit, limited even by his stamina. In addition, when the Hero's Shade directly strikes Link with his sword, Link takes no damage, only getting knocked back. This is similar to how he can be struck by the Guardians of the Silent Realm, yet not lose his health in the Light World, only resetting the trial. So, perhaps it really is just his spirit transported with the Hero's Shade, and not his body at all. Now, if the Spirit Realm is such a mysterious, unknown world, what good does it do to mention it by name in Breath of the Wild? It could just be a simple reference, and I think at the time it may have been. After all, it comes not long before Zelda first hears the voice from the Master Sword, which is heavily implied to be the spirit, Fi. But in light of everything I just mentioned, let's have another look at the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, shall we? First, and perhaps most importantly, the trailer has a huge emphasis on the pale green, glowy color used for spirits throughout the series. This immediately gives a very haunting tone, to be sure, but the trailer also shows plenty of luminous stones. Stones said to contain the souls of the dead. So right off the bat, it immediately establishes a pretty heavy theme of spirits and souls. Then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, Ganondorf, held down by a mysterious green hand. Now, I won't try to go too in-depth on this as it's been way past covered by now, but the hand itself matches the green used for spirits in Breath of the Wild perfectly. Combined with the fact that not many living things stick around as a hand, monsters don't count. This thing is probably some kind of spirit. So, as the trailer seems to have such a massive emphasis on spirits, all I can say is this. If the game has an alternate world, the Spirit Realm seems to be the strongest contender. The remaining question, of course, is how would said Spirit Realm be accessible to Link? Well, I have a thought on that as well. For Link to be able to access the Spirit Realm, it's likely he would need something he didn't have in the first game, otherwise he could do it already. Judging from previous appearances of what may be the Spirit Realm, a living being can only enter this realm with either the help of another spirit, such as the Hero's Shade, or with a little bit of divine intervention, like with the Silent Realms. There's also the Hylians turned into spirits from Twilight Princess, but since the Twilight isn't likely to come back, I doubt that's much of an option. The second option doesn't seem too likely either, unless Hylia becomes a lot more directly involved in the sequel, so for the purposes of this video, I'll just explore option 1 a little bit. Now, what do we see in the sequel trailer that Link would newly obtain, something with an obvious connection to spirits, maybe even connected to the spirit of a person who could bring Link to the Spirit Realm? I wonder what it could be. Okay, in case that wasn't obvious, I'm thinking the glowy hand could be Link's ticket into the almost afterlife. It would probably work like most other cross-dimensional travel in Zelda has, where at certain locations Link would be able to use the hand to cross over into the Spirit Realm. These locations would probably be tied to spirits, and would probably appear during the course of the game, so they could be something as simple as a ring of luminous stones, or something as crazy as the entrance to an entire spirit temple. Regardless of exactly how the Spirit Realm would be accessed, I think Breath of the Wild 2 is already well prepared to include it as an alternate world. So, what do you think? Am I crazy, or will Breath of the Wild 2 give us some insight to Zelda's Spirit Realm? and finally explain some of the most intriguing aspects of Zelda lore to date? Let me know in the comments, because I'm eager to hear your thoughts on the topic. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to let me know by liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time you're in the Legend Zone.